Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. Today we're going to be talking about the issue of abortion. And with the most recent SCOTUS nominee from President Trump, Amy Coney Barrett, it seems as though the Roe versus Wade decision could be up for reconsideration as a possibility in the future. It doesn't seem like there's anything on the docket right now, but the 6-3 conservative majority here could lead to some further interpretation of that law. So I'm going to go through a little bit of what's on the books now and what I think our path to the future really should be or could be when it comes to abortion. Now, first off, there has been a lot of conjecture around abortion, and both sides are kind of hiding the ball a little bit when it comes to their arguments as it pertains to abortion. First off, abortion is legal federally across all 50 states. There have been movements in some of the more liberal states towards later term abortions or abortion on demand, as they might have called it, and even some inferences from Governor Northam about maybe infanticide type abortions after birth. It's something that is hotly contested about exactly what is meant there and how that works, but for instance, if a baby is born alive after an abortion, the question becomes what level of care is necessary for that child that was supposed to be aborted that ended up surviving? Do they get the same level of care that a baby that was born and wanted received, or is there something less than that that is offered because essentially that kid is destined to die to some degree? And I'm not going to put too fine a point on it because that's essentially what's happening. Now, the pro-choice side of this is essentially that that child, until born, is not anything more than a vessel of the mother or a part of the mother. And to some degree, that's accurate. That baby is a part of that mother, is connected, is growing from, for a lot of the term of that pregnancy, needs the mother to be there in order to sustain life. At what point that changes, again, is another highly antagonistic argument that occurs between pro-life and pro-choice as to when life occurs. The pro-lifers, of course, believe that life begins at conception. There is fringe elements that believe that even before then, creating a hospitable environment is necessary and would put all manners of birth control into a abortion type category, which I think is also probably not quite fair in the sense that conception is really where we see a sea change between mother before, mother after, the sperm and the egg, and the actual splitting cells that occur once they have joined. That life there with brand new DNA seems to me to be the most reasonable place to draw that line of where life begins, which makes me very pro-choice. Now, where this becomes really difficult is when you get into the politics of it, because the science shouldn't be that widely disputed, but this is where the two sides start hiding the ball a little bit. I will go through the Republican side first, or the conservative argument first, and where they're screwing it up and where the left is screwing up theirs, and the liberals and Democrats. So first, on the Republican side, we say that we are pro-life largely, and in order to sustain that, we have to be anti-abortion. Now, what should go right in line with that is the notion that our goal is to eliminate as many unwanted pregnancies as possible, which would mean that birth control should be pretty high on that list. Birth control is the best way to make sure that you don't have unwanted pregnancies, but because of a religious element in our group, that's toned down a lot. That's actually considered a problem in a lot of conservative circles. I think it's changing, but if you do want to be pro-life, then being pro-birth control should also be hand in hand. Those should go together very, very nicely, and unfortunately they don't. The second part, when it comes to Democrats, liberals, and where they're sort of hiding the ball, is this notion that somehow life doesn't begin until birth. And I understand why they do that as well, because it's important to not believe that thing that you are allowing to be terminated is a life. It makes the argument much more difficult. Now, we do make these sort of nuanced arguments all the time. A life is not a life in all categories, like, for instance, self-defense, when it comes to the death penalty, when it comes to war. We take life in different categories. If there's a situation where life matters, we have a very nuanced and specific argument for that. And then we also have lives that not necessarily don't matter, but don't matter as much. And I would think that if liberals and Democrats tried to make that argument about abortion with the notion that, yes, it is a life, but where are we placing the value of that life when it's 32 cells? Is that really an important life? Is that something that we need to cultivate? And I think that argument could be made probably a little bit more reasonably. Right now, that's not the way it goes. So that's a little bit where they're hiding the ball. Now, the big argument that's going to be coming up is a lot of these late-term abortions, and some of the laws that have been put into place deal with that type of thing. They're called right-to-life laws. I believe there was one in Georgia. They're going to be in a bunch of different states, and it's a response to a lot of those late-term abortion type laws. And the thing that is said, that is, if you are going to do late-term abortions, or abortions of any kind really, you need to have facilities available that could sustain a life if that child was born by accident, essentially. If that abortion failed and the child was born, you need to be able to take care of that child as though it is any other hospital. You need to have the same facilities available. You need to have the same expertise on hand, all of those different things. You also need to have privileges at a hospital to admit. Now, a lot of these places, specifically in Planned Parenthood, do not have hospital privileges, and they also don't have the facilities to sustain newborns. It is this argument that ends up becoming very, very troublesome for places like Planned Parenthood, which does not have broadly hospital privileges or the facilities necessary to take care of a life that wasn't aborted. It's not present. Conservatives are hiding the ball a little bit when they say that this is just for the sake of those children that are born after a failed abortion, because it's wildly rare, and not that they shouldn't be taken care of, but 10 a year is pretty limited, and I think it actually might even be less than that. But what they are trying to do, and where the ball is being hidden, is that if Planned Parenthood can't hit those spots, they have to shut down. They can't hold those facilities. So what you're doing tacitly is eliminating abortion clinics across the country that can't either obtain hospital privileges fast enough or in time, or don't have the facilities necessary in order to be able to sustain a newborn after birth. So it's a backdoor way to get all these places shut down, which again seems a little unfair. If you want to get them shut down, just say you want to shut them down. Don't put rules and hurdles in place that specifically make that happen because that's your goal. That's the issue that we're going to be running into back and forth here. Now, the Democratic side, and where they're hiding the ball on this, is that they say it's so rare, it doesn't happen, it's not an issue, it's a solution where there is no problem, which again, 10 a year is probably not a problem, but it does happen. And the thought, in my head at least, of a child suffering through whatever that trauma is of an abortion and surviving, and then not being taken care of, not getting the opportunity to fulfill the life that they fought for through whatever that trauma might have been. And I don't understand how you make that argument. Now, this is where I break it down. And if I was running, if I was going to be going out there, my argument would be, I don't care about the law. Roe v. Wade can stay on the books. It can be legal in every state. My goal would be to eliminate as much unwanted pregnancy as possible, and that could be through education, that could be through broad recognition of birth control and trying to get that out there and available to as many people as possible. That's where I break from the conservative side quite a bit. And from the liberal side, I think where we need to come in a little bit is recognizing that there should be a stigma around this. The notion that an abortion occurs and we do have a loss of life is important if you want to say that this is something that should be curtailed. Now, if you say it's not a life, it's just the same as getting an abscess removed or taking out just a clump of cells, well, it doesn't mean anything. People do that all the time and nobody feels bad about it, right? It's a standard procedure that you go into and get that done. If abortion's looked at it that same way, then what is the reason why you wouldn't want to get it done, right? So our goal is make it so that everybody understands the gravity of what's occurring here, but also let's try to eliminate it proactively and beforehand with birth control, education, all of these different things to lower that birth rate as much as possible, or that unwanted birth rate as much as possible. For instance, I want to say it was 2016 in New York, more black babies were aborted than were born in New York in that year. And whether you like abortion or agree with abortion or not, whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, the notion that that many were lost as opposed to gained seems problematic. And it seems like that side is a major issue, not only in the black community and a lot of minority communities, but across the board for all of us, that there shouldn't be that many unwanted pregnancies when we have the capabilities to prevent it now, today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to be doing these on a daily basis. We've got a lot coming up this week with the President's SCOTUS nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. We'll be talking a little bit about her, some of her previous rulings, the issues that she's going to run into as we move into the trial aspect or the acceptance aspect of her nomination. We'll go through all of that. We also have the first presidential debate on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, tomorrow, we'll be doing a load in and get you kind of prepped for what's going to be discussed that night, things that you can kind of see hot spots and where they're going to be pressing each other between these two candidates. On Wednesday, we'll do a rundown and get everything about how that went and who was the winner, what were the snappy lines that occurred, and get you all caught up on that front. And then we'll turn out the rest of the week with more of these videos about gun control and death penalty and all of the other things that are out there that probably should have a good solid understanding as you're getting into politics and understanding a little bit more. If you have any questions for me, definitely leave a message at drawnandcornered@gmail.com. That's drawn, A-N-D, cornered@gmail.com. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.